Welcome everybody to BODHI MAGGA in this month of November. We're well into autumn and winter climes as well. So today again we have Paul who's going to continue our exploration of the 7 factors of awakening, the Bojjanga, with the focus on Samadhi, the 6th one, unification of mind, and how Samadhi can help us to counter the hindrances within our formal practice, but also in our daily lives. We will also have a guided Vipassana meditation as part of today's session. We are recording this session, which we will then publish later on YouTube. So with that, I warmly welcome Paul to start the session today.
Thank you so much, Gihanta. And so wonderful to see you all, as always. So as Gihanta mentioned, we're going to focus on Samadhi today, continuing what we started last session. And what we'll do today is have the session really in 3 parts. So the first part quite short, where, as you all know, our focus here with BODHI MAGGA is for those who have not yet attained the stream to attain the stream. And for anybody who has already attained path and fruit of Sotapan, whatever their next path and fruit is. And particularly for most of us on this call, it's going to be the former. And actually, even for anybody who already has, it's very, very helpful just to reconnect sometimes the heart and mind with the extraordinary importance of stream entry and why the Buddha urged us so many times to do everything possible in this lifetime to attain the stream. And for any of us who have already attained that place, the Buddha often talked about review. So looking back over one's practice, so whatever one has attained, looking back and seeing what has already been accomplished and acknowledging what has already been accomplished and experiencing the joy, the Dhamma joy of seeing that and that establishing that. So one of the places where the Buddha speaks very directly about or really all of the stages of liberation, but actually focusing on stream entry, is a sutta which I think pretty well all of you will know well, and some of you even may know by heart, which is the Ratana Sutta, the jewels. And it's very interesting how, as you know, this is a Parita Sutta. This is a protection sutta. It's one of the 3 most important of all of the protection suttas. And how much in this sutta the Buddha speaks about stream entry. So I just wanted to pick out a few phrases because you'll have heard this so many times. And just so that to reconnect, to reestablish the heart in the very, very significant meaning of what he's saying here. So, for example, there's a verse, it's around halfway through, where the Buddha talks about he gives the metaphor of a gatepost being established in the ground. So in the Pali he says, Yatinda kilo pattavin sitosiya. So just as a gatepost is established, is planted in the ground. So you can imagine how firm that is, right? And then he goes on to say, that gatepost will not be blown around by the winds. So the 4 winds, Chatubivat Devi, asampakampiyo. So it's not swayed, it's not blown around by the wind. It's very, very firm. And then he compares that to what he calls a sapurisa. So sapurisa comes many, many times in the discourses as an excellent person. So tatupaman, in the same way, sapurisan vadami, I talk about an excellent person. So, and then he defines what is an excellent person. So he says, Yo Arya Sachani Avecha Pasati. So Arya Sachani, you may know, means the noble truths. And then Avecha Pasati means has definitely, Avecha is a very strong word in Pali, has absolutely, definitely seen the Four Noble Truths. So he's defining one who is really excellent, a sapurisa or sapurisa, as a person who has completely seen, recognized the Four Noble Truths for themselves. So not just one who can recite them, as most people can, but who has actually seen them in the practice. So that's one of the very interesting lines here. And then he says, he then goes on to talk about the benefits, and in very, very concrete terms. So he says, anybody who has seen the truths, who has cognized the noble truths, even if they are extremely heedless, and the Pali is kinchapite honti bussa pamata. So bussa in Pali means extremely, and pamata, heedless. So if you're extremely heedless, having attained stream entry, and then the next line, nate bhavan attaman adiyanti. So adiyanti literally means to take up, and attaman or bhavan attaman is an eighth life. So in other words, having attained stream entry, even if after that point you then are not very diligent in your practice, you have uprooted the defilements to a sufficient degree that you have a maximum of 7 lives left. So that's huge. And so, you know, this simile that we've talked about quite a bit in the past, where the Buddha is sitting in front of all of the Sangha, you know, and dipping his finger in the soil, in the dust. So he's got a tiny bit of dust in his fingernail, and he says, which is greater, the dust under this fingernail or all of the dust on this great earth? You know, and of course, the bhikkhus are like, well, of course, Bhante, you know, all of the dust on this great earth is uncountably larger than the dust under your fingernail. So in the same way, after stream entry, the Buddha is saying categorically here, there's a maximum of 7 lives having attained stream entry. Nate bhavan attaman adiyanti. It's really interesting how clear he is about it. And then in the next verse, he then talks about very specifically why that is. So what you know, how is it that so much suffering is completely destroyed at this point? So he says, together with sahavasa dasana sampadaya, which means together with your attaining of wisdom, sampadaya, your attaining of this wisdom, 3 things are discarded. Tai asu dhamma jahita bhavanti. So jahita is completely discarded, just gone, right? So what are these 3 things? Sakaya ditti. So as you know, view that there is any kind of self in any of our experience, any kind of self in the materiality of the body, any kind of self in anything mental that arises, any kind of self at any level whatsoever. So the view that self exists, completely destroyed. So he says that very, very distinctly. And then vichikichitanta. So the second thing, doubt. Doubt about what? Doubt that the Buddha was who he said he was, completely awakened, who knew things exactly as they are. So these things that he claimed, any doubt about that? Doubt that the Dhamma is the way that things are. Doubt that the Arya Sangha are people who have actually themselves successfully walked this path. So that doubt is completely gone. So it's not possible to from this point on to then take another teacher other than the Buddha. The heart is completely established. And then sila batan. So that's roughly translates as rules and rituals. So really, it's like if we look at the world and we look at when people who are not deeply in the Dhamma are talking about ways to attain real happiness. So all kinds of purification rituals and prayers to this and that, and going to this and that sacred shrine, and all of these many rituals. So the Buddha is saying that all of that is completely dispelled. You know that the only way to complete freedom is through bringing forth the Eightfold Path and seeing the Four Noble Truths exactly as it is. That's the only way. And then the next two lines, I just wanted to do these two because these are very important. So he says, Chattu appayehi cha vippamuto. So what does that mean? So vippamuto is completely freed, and Chattu appayehi means the four. So apaya is there's the planes where there's suffering. So for example, the Peta realm. So if we're reborn in the Peta realm, as we know from the commentaries, there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of hunger and just many other things. It's not at all pleasant. Or of course the animal realms, and the Buddha talked extensively about incalculable amount of suffering that happens in the animal realms. Or if you fall into these Asura realms, these sort of demonic, these huge beings who lead these very demonic, violent lives, and of course the hell realms, right? So you're completely free from these realms. That's like, oh my gosh, that's like incredible. And all of us have spent an incalculable amount of time in these realms, in our wanderings in samsara, and we've forgotten about it. For those of us who don't have the power to look back at our past lives, we've forgotten how much suffering we've gone through. But all of that is cut off completely. So these remaining 7 lives are all minimally in the human realm. And then the final line I wanted to share is Chachabi Tanani Abhabukaton, which means you are incapable of what he calls it's difficult to translate, but it's really kind of the great crimes, the 6 great crimes. So you'll be familiar with the 5 main ones. So killing one's mother, killing one's father, killing an arahant, injuring the Buddha, and intentionally creating a schism in the Sangha. And the 6th one is taking another teacher. So you're completely incapable of doing any of those six things. And as you may know from the suttas, the karma from the first 5 of those is appallingly heavy. So if you were to commit any of those in your life, if you kill your mother or your father, like unthinkable, but people do it. I mean, you read it in the news, or people who have shot their mother or shot their father, or in one case recently, I think a few years ago, a couple of brothers, American brothers, who killed both their mother and their father. And so if you do that, the karma, the garu karma, is so heavy that you're basically destined to spend the rest of this eon in the hell realms. So having attained stream entry, you're incapable of doing any of these things. So really the key is you're incapable of coming to great harm. And it's impossible for us to really get the importance of this, how attaining stream entry is just off the scale important for all of us. And for any of us who have, to reflect on these things and think, oh my gosh, I have actually done this. I've actually used this life. It's to the very highest purpose. Okay, so that's a little bit on stream entry, because we haven't really talked about that before. We've kind of talked about, oh yeah, it's really important to attain the stream entry, but we haven't really drilled into it. Like, why? Really, why? Okay, So the rest of the session, we're going to do Yeski Hunter.
Just wondering, Paul, why is it that we forget? It's the fact that we've forgotten about, as you said, we've lived lives maybe in difficult realms in the past and all of that. And if we remember, I know, for instance, if you train your mind to a certain point, then you might be able to remember. And the Arahats, or the Buddha, certainly does. But why is it that we forget, even people with fairly well-trained minds? Because that would really reduce a lot of the doubt if we had better understanding.
It would. Yes, it's so. If we think about how the Buddha talked about moha, delusion, he talked about it as this great darkness, this great blackness. And if we reflect on why is it, given the amount of suffering in samsara, we don't pay attention to it? We go life after life after life after life, on and on and on, without paying attention to it. Why? So that's what delusion does. It obstructs wisdom. It obstructs seeing. In the same ways when you walk into a completely black room, right? So even in my own house here, once it's dark outside and the curtains are drawn, if I walk around the house with the lights off, I can't see anything, nothing. Even though, I even actually know where the furniture is, kind of, but I actually can't see anything. And that's what delusion does. It blackens everything. And so as we go from life to life, the experience of death and the experience of being born, particularly in the human realm. So if we think about what we've all been through just to be born, right? So conceived in the womb, and then going through this actually very difficult process for 9 months of the physical part of the body, the physical body gradually being constructed, the brain, this very complex physical organ, gradually getting constructed, and then having to go through all of that, and then the trauma of being born as well, which is not just traumatic for the mother, for sure, it's also traumatic for the child. And we've all been through it, even just in this very life. And there are various reasons why memories get erased, but that's part of it. Also, think about this. Many of us on this call are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? So our early childhood was all of those years ago. So if you think back for yourself to when you were 1 year old or 2 years old, how much can you remember? Even when you were 5, how much can you actually remember? Right? So even not having gone through the trauma of being born and spent 9 months in the womb, even then, so many memories are erased. It's really extraordinary. And for a lot of us, we reach, middle age and old age, and our entire childhood memories are practically gone. We can just about kind of remember our childhood home and a few bits and bobs about school, but 99% of it is just gone completely. And so, that delusion is a big part of that. The Buddha also talked about how the hindrances themselves weaken the mind and weaken memory, very much so. So if you really want to improve your memory, the Buddha said, and there's discourses where he actually lays this out, what you need to do is to conquer the hindrances, because the more unobstructed the mind is, the more clearly it sees. So that then makes sense about how we can then see our past lives, because if you are able to subdue the hindrances to the extent that you can actually enter absorption, really develop the jhanas strongly, particularly fourth jhana, so the mind is very powerful, it's radiant, pure, it's unblemished, it's malleable, it's wieldy, all of these wonderful adjectives that the Buddha gives to a mind that comes out of fourth jhana, then you have a very powerful memory. And that's why you can actually go back and look at your early memories in this life, but also past lives. So that's how you do it. So that's both why we can't remember and how we actually can remember if we put in the time and the effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Shiroma, did you want to add anything to that? You're on mute, by the way.
I think you explained clearly and beautifully. It's just the same. When the hindrances are subdued, the samadhi state comes, and that is a clarity there. Quite a lot of clarity and one-pointedness and purity in the mind. So that links in nicely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, it's a happy synchronicity that we are actually focusing on samadhi today. So we're going to meditate for a little while, and then what I want to do for the rest of the session is focus on some very specific ways to deal with distraction in the mind and to build samadhi. So I'm going to talk briefly about it now before we go into the meditation, because it may have a useful impact on the meditation itself when we get into it now. So there's a wonderful discourse. Well, actually, throughout the suttas, the Buddha gives many ways of dealing with distractions in the mind. There's a particular discourse in the Majjhima Nikaya called the Vitakka Santana Sutta, it's Majjhima Nikaya 20, which you've probably come across before, where he gives 5 very specific remedies for dealing with distraction. And the reason why I want to talk about it today and actually work on the sutta is, it's one, as with everything really, it's one thing kind of vaguely knowing these things. It's another thing knowing them so well that when you're actually practicing, especially when you're on retreat, but actually even when you're doing your half an hour or hour sit at home in the evening, to actually be able to recall them and use them when you need them, rather than thinking, oh wait, yeah, there's that discourse, I heard some Bhante talking about it, or we did it in Bodhi Magga, didn't we? Now what was it again? So usually that's what often happens with these things. They become vague in the mind, and you want to be able to recall it very, very clearly, what the tactics are and how to do it. So that's what we're going to work on today. I'm just going to very briefly give them to you. Actually, if you have your Dhamma diaries to hand, you might want to write this down. So if you, at the top of the page, if you could write these 5 letters down. So this is a mnemonic. So if you could write them as capital letters with a full stop after each one. Okay, so the first one is R. R. So now it's a big capital R, full stop. Then I, capital I, full stop. Then D, capital D, full stop. Then S, capital S, full stop. And then C, capital C, full stop. So if you look at that, you'll see that the first 4 letters form the word rids, rids. And then you have rids and then C. So each of these letters stands for something, and we're going to talk about what that is. Okay. But in terms of remembering this little mnemonic, you can think of it as this. It rids of clutter. The C could stand for clutter. So it rids the mind of clutter, rids of clutter. So the R, and the Buddha gives these as an ascending scale. So if you're stuck in your practice, you start with R. What is the R? replace. So whatever the thought is, craving thought, aversion thought, whatever it is, replace it with something wholesome. And after the meditation, we're going to talk about ways of doing that. So R is replace. I is investigate, and specifically investigate danger. So here you're reflecting on, hey, this is not good. This is not good for me. So investigate danger. So that's the I. D is disregard. So here the Buddha's saying, ignore it. Don't pay attention to it. D, disregard. The S is slow down, slow the mind down. And he gives a very useful analogy for this, which we'll talk about. So slow the mind down. And then the C is crush. So specifically crushing the mind with might. So we'll talk about that. It's pretty drastic. So this is if all else fails, crush. So we'll talk about what that means. So these 5 letters, making this sort of little sentence, rids of clutter, are each of these letters has a very specific meaning, which we'll go through. And it's just helpful to have that little mnemonic, rids of clutter, because then you can remember, okay, RIDSC, okay, fine. And then when you're in your meditation, it's like, okay, let me start with R. Okay, that's not going to work. Let's do I instead, etc. Okay, so we'll come to the detail of that. But I just wanted to present that as a little sort of priming, just to kind of seed it in the mind. Okay, very good. So now we're going to spend a little bit of time meditating. So as always, a great way to start is just to find a comfortable position. Comfortable position for the body. Just settling yourself wherever you're sitting, assuming you are sitting. So that the body is relaxed, but also poised at the same time. And so the back is poised all the way from the top of the head, down through the neck, down through the spine, down to the base of the spine, onto wherever you're sitting. So just relaxing the body. And through this relaxing, noticing. Just beginning to observe the body. Observe the experience of this body. The moment-to-moment experience. How is the body right now? How is it? And however it is, comfortable, or maybe not comfortable, or maybe somewhere in between, just gently observing that. Just being with it just as it is. Just as it is. And the attention may pick up the breath, whether it's the rising and falling. Maybe it'll pick up the sensations, the base of the nose, above the lips, wherever it naturally picks the breath up. And again, just noticing. What is the experience? This thing we call breath. You may find, as the body relaxes, you may find the breath getting a little longer, perhaps a little deeper. You may find starting to experience more tranquility. Some more calmness. The stilling of the body formation. And as the body calms, so too the mind calms. As they're intimately connected. With a calm body comes a calm mind. With a calm mind comes a calm body. Each one conditions, affects the other. And so what we're doing is really putting everything down, all concerns, thoughts about the past, or about what's to come. Really experiencing now, each moment, now, just as it is. And in fact, the past is really always behind us. The future is always ahead of us. And so all we have, all we really have, ever, is just now. Is just the present moment. Just this. Just this. And so right now, in each moment, we have sensations in the body. There could be sensations of many kinds. Lightnesses, heavinesses, pressures, tinglings, maybe some smoothness, perhaps some roughness, maybe some hardnesses, some softnesses. You may have sensations of flowing, sensations of cohesion. Maybe the experience of different temperatures, warmth, maybe coolness, maybe different temperatures around different parts of the body. You may have the experience of movement, the movement of the abdomen, maybe elsewhere. And we know that the Buddha taught us that all of these different sensations are related to the four great elements. Some are earth element, some are water element, some are fire, and some are air element. And together they make up this experience of the physical body, the materiality of the body, and how we experience it in each moment. These four elements are continually changing, arising, and passing away, arising, and passing away. Continually. And because they arise and they pass away, how could they belong to anybody? How could they be part of a self? Or how could there be a self in them? They're insubstantial, just like foam. No substance. And also in this experience, the elements of the mind, Dhamma, including feeling, Vedana. Some of it is pleasant. Some of it may be unpleasant. Some of it may be in between, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. This Vedana, these feelings just arise and pass away. Arise and pass away. How could there be a self in these feelings that just arise and pass away? Or how could these feelings be part of a self? They're just like a bubble on a lake, empty, pops at any time. There's no substance. It's impermanent. And also part of this experience is another aspect of the mind, perception, sanya. That which recognizes things. Creates concepts in the mind. Gives things labels. And again, perceptions change continually. They just arise, pass away. And then a new perception arises and passes away. How could there be a self in this perception? Or how could this perception be part of a self? It's completely empty. Just like a mirage. There's nothing really there. And also arising, another aspect of the mind, of volitional formations, sankharas, intentions. For example, the intention to remain sitting, the intention to keep the eyes closed. These are intentions. Or any experience of the wholesome or the unwholesome, kindness, generosity, wisdom. For example, these are mental formations, volitional formations, sankharas, that just arise and pass away. Impermanent. How could there be a self? These formations that just arise and pass away. Or how could they be part of a self? In the same way as a banana tree, a banyan tree, has nothing in it. There's no core. It has no heartwood. It can just be unrolled. So it's completely flat. It is empty, empty inside. So too, these mental formations, these volitional formations, these sankharas, are empty, impermanent. They arise and pass away. And then also, there is something knowing all of this, knowing the experience. Consciousness. Again, just arising and passing away. Arising and passing away. How could there be a self in consciousness when it just arises and passes away? Or how could it be part of a self? It is just like a conjurer's trick, a magician's trick. It has no substance at all. Empty. In seeing this arising and this passing away, you can directly know, directly see that all things arise from a cause. They are conditioned. Each cause too is impermanent. Just arises and passes. This experience right now is entirely independently originated. Without substance. Subject to continual change. Flux. Insubstantial. And the Buddha said, one who sees this as it is, sees with the right wisdom, Samapanyaya pasati. And one who sees things with the right wisdom, this is the path to purity. Isamaggo visuddhya. This is the path to liberation. Seeing with right wisdom. The arising and the passing of all things, all conditioned things, all experience, just now, just now, just now, just now. Wonderful. And so in your own time, just bring our attention into the room. And while doing it, knowing that with the eyes open too, everything is still arising and passing. So even as we resume the session, this is still just these five aggregates arising and passing. It is not something limited to when we are sitting in meditation with our eyes closed. It is all there ever is. Our whole lives, all the lives we've ever lived, and ever will live are just these 5 aggregates arising and passing. It's all there is. And when we fully know this, the heart and mind is completely free. All the fetters are abandoned. Cessation of clinging. We'll just close this by wishing all beings everywhere throughout the entire universe, complete liberation as soon as possible. And acknowledging with the deepest gratitude that we have the Dhamma, we have the Buddha's teaching. How incredibly fortunate we are, unimaginably fortunate. And so really committing to using this life as wisely as possible, with diligence, being heedful, paying attention to what the Buddha taught us. Paying attention to the impermanence of everything. Not ignoring it. Paying wise attention. Just with wise attention, whole path arises. With wise attention. Wonderful, thank you. So if your eyes are not already open, this would be a time to let them gently open. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. It could be during those few minutes, that half an hour that we were intent on meditation, some samadhi built, which would be lovely if it did. So we're going to spend the rest of the time, the other 45 minutes that we've got, looking into these 5 things we talked about earlier that the Buddha gives, this specific prescription for what we do when the mind is continually distracted. So imagine this. So we've just been meditating, and all of you have done a lot of meditation. So whatever kind of practice you're doing, so if you're doing a samatha practice, right? So let's say you're doing some metta, or you're doing vipassana practice. If you're doing a samatha practice, then usually what happens is, the mind wanders, and what do? You just gently bring it back. It wanders, and you gently bring it back, right? So you know that so well. Or if you're doing vipassana practice, again, you might bring your mind back to an object like the breath, but if it persists, what you might do is bring the awareness, bring the mindfulness to the thought itself, right? Again, you're probably very familiar with this. So, for example, you might just observe, thinking. Or if the mind is planning, it's like, planning, just gently observing the thought. So this you're probably familiar with. But what do you do if, having done that, having brought the mind back, or if you're doing vipassana practice, you've observed it, you've noted it, it still obsesses the mind, and still obsesses the mind, and still obsesses the mind? What do you do? So this is where these 5 things that the Buddha talks about become very, very helpful indeed. This is the recipe. Okay. So in your Dhamma diaries, earlier, actually for anybody who's just joined, you may not know this. So what we did, just before we did the meditation just now, is we're specifically talking about the 5 things, the 5 tactics, the 5 tools that the Buddha gives for dealing with distracted thoughts. And so the first one is to replace the thought. So what we did is we wrote the letters for each one across the top of the page. So R, big R, replace. So what does that mean? So the analogy the Buddha gives is, imagine you're a carpenter and you're banging in a peg, but the peg is very, very coarse. And so what you might do is you might get a more refined peg and bang that in instead. So using something more refined to work with. So imagine in your practice, you probably had plenty of experiences of this, where your mind is obsessed with craving, let's say, right? So you're sitting there, you're doing whatever it is, you've metta bhavana, anapanasati, whatever you're doing, and the mind is just obsessed with thoughts of desire, on and on and on and on. And let's suppose in this particular instance, the desire is to do with a person that your mind finds attractive. So it could be, somebody you met earlier in the day. It could be somebody, your neighbor, could be your own wife or husband. It doesn't matter. The point is that it's somebody who your mind finds really attractive, and that desire, that lust in the mind, obsesses the mind, and so all you can think about is them. And you're either recalling things that actually happened, things they said. It's like, they said this, and they did this, and we went here, and we went there, and we sat down at this and that table, and whatever the memory is. Or you're fantasizing about something that's never happened, but you would like to happen. So the mind then starts getting into, oh, it'd be so great if we did this, and you're imagining going to this park and sitting down at some restaurant or whatever the mind comes up with. So the mind is either obsessed with memories or fantasies. What do you do? One of the classic remedies, as you'll know, and it's not really taught very much to lay people, it probably should be, but some of you I know have done it, is to reflect on some asubha, some unattractive aspect of the physical body. So if you've ever done 32 parts practice, you'll know that what the Buddha does is to break the body down into these different parts. And in doing so, it changes perception. Because when the mind is obsessed with lust, the perception is of the body as beautiful, right? It has to be. But the reality of the body, when you really pay attention to it, is it's actually not so beautiful at all. And so, as you know, if you've done 32 parts practice, you literally take it part by part, starting with head hair, kesa, right? So you know what it's like. If you look at a head hair and you just like hold it in the hand, it's not so pretty after, is it? Especially when you see it in the shower or something. It's not attractive at all. But it's the same head hair, which when the mind is obsessed with lust, it just perceives this, oh, they've got such nice hair. And so directing the mind to the asubha nature of the body when your mind is obsessed with lust would be an example of this first tactic that the Buddha is teaching us: replace. So you can see what's happened. So rather than the mind perceiving in the thought, perceiving something as beautiful, as attractive, you're replacing it with what is actually an accurate perception of it, which is of its unattractiveness. Now, if you find 32 parts difficult, it could be that there's one or two of the parts where you do actually find some connection and doesn't feel so difficult to do, and is enough to break the grip of lust on the mind. It could be skin. Skin's pretty interesting, right? So if you really reflect on skin, tacho, it's actually this, it's got millions and millions and millions of tiny holes in it. And it's actually got a lot of bacteria on it. If you look at skin under a microscope, it's pretty scary. It's got a lot of animals on it, very, very small ones. So it could be that. It could be teeth. You know, as you know, we've all had teeth fall out, right? When we were children, and maybe when you're adults. You look at a tooth and it's horrible, right? But when the mind is obsessed with lust, it doesn't see that. It just doesn't get it. So it could be that there's a particular body part that you think, okay, I can take just that one, and that's enough just to bring it into the mind, and that'll be enough to break the thought of lust. So with this, just have a look for yourself right now. Just look at your own heart and mind's relationship to the 32 parts. So for those of you who are not that familiar with it, I'll just go through them. So you've got head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. So those are the first five. And you'll notice with all of those, head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, that they're all visible. They're immediately visible. So if you look at somebody, you can see them, right off the bat. Then the next five that the Buddha gives are not so visible. So you've got flesh, So again, and that it's amazing how much of the body is made up of flesh. You look at your leg, and fully like 80% of it is flesh. And then you've got sinews. So sinews, as you may know, are those things which are either tie muscles to muscles, or they tie muscles to the tendons to bones. And there's a lot of them in the body. And then you've got the bones themselves. You know, we've all seen pictures of skeletons, but right here, like if you touch your head, skull, right? Or if you just touch your hand, and you've got the carpal bones just right here, you can actually feel them. It's bone. That's actually what it is. And then, of course, inside bone, particularly in certain parts of the body, like the pelvis, for example, is bone marrow. And bone marrow is sort of white to red kind of. It's a very weird kind of thing, bone marrow. And then the other one that he gives in this next set of 5 is kidneys. And kidneys, you know, as you know, that kind of little sort of horseshoe kind of shape, you know, on around the back of the body. So those are the next 5. And then the 5 after that are all internal. So the Buddha starts with the heart. And then the liver, which is the biggest organ in the body. And then you've got the diaphragm, very, very powerful muscle. And then you've got the spleen, which is also kind of around the back, which is quite pink in color because it's usually full of blood. And you've got the lungs. So these are all things in the torso, basically, sort of kind of from the head down towards the abdomen. And then the next 5 he gives are all basically the abdomen downwards. You know, so you have intestines, which are amazing. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like intestines stretched out. It's about 20 feet long. It's unbelievable. It's huge. And then mesentery, that kind of white stuff that's in the intestines. Undigested food. So every time we eat food, what happens to it? It goes in the mouth, down the food pipe to the stomach, right? So already, literally like 5-10 seconds after you swallowed it, that's what it is. It's sitting in the stomach. Horrible, right? You wouldn't exactly touch it after that, right? And then of course you've got excrement, and depending on which formation of the 32 parts you use, brain, it's a big thing here. And all of those are essentially earth element, because they're all basically solid, right? But so they're predominantly earth element. Now it could be that one of those 20 or 2 or 3, when you think about it, it's like, okay, I could actually use that. That actually could work for me. For example, if you eat liver, for those of you who eat meat, which is probably not very many of you at all, but if you do eat liver, or if you ever have eaten liver in the past, you know exactly what it looks like when you put it on a frying pan. That's the same liver that's in the body. That's the same liver that's in the person, inside the person that we're attracted to when our mind is obsessed with lust. It's exactly the same thing. And then there are there are 12 other body parts which are all mostly liquid. In fact, I think about it, entirely liquid. So the key point is, if you're going to use this tactic of replacement, especially when there's lust in the mind, it can be really helpful just to ask yourself, what could actually work for me? What could work for me? And then in your practice, it's actually useful to dedicate some practice time to reflecting on the body part itself. So to actually, having done whatever practice you normally do, anapanasati or metta or whatever you normally do, to spend a little bit of time just bringing this to the mind. It's like, oh, okay. So let's say you've chosen, I don't know, bone. It's like, okay, bone. And you just bring to mind a skeleton. or a part of a skeleton. It could be like an arm, a bone in the arm, the humerus bone, for example. And just like, okay, what is this thing? Bone, what is it? And gradually you'll find over time, the image will get stronger and stronger. If you do it every day, every time you sit and practice, even for like 2 minutes, let alone 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, but even just a small amount of time, I promise you'll be amazed how your mind will get clearer and clearer about this thing called bone. And what that will give you is this incredibly powerful tool that every time lust starts to obsess the mind, you'll then have the ability to bring this image of bone, if that's what you've been practicing, into the mind. It'll be like, oh, bone. And you'll find that the lust will start to weaken. So that's replacement. Oh my boy. Replacement. Okay, now let's suppose that what's obsessing the mind is not actually lust, it's aversion. Let's suppose a memory of something that somebody said or did is like, it's really annoying. It's like, oh God, I can't believe that person is so stupid, and da, 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 da. Your mind's just full of annoyance, irritation, outright resentment. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. What do you do? Okay. Well, it may be too hard to bring metta to that person. And maybe there's just so much aversion. It's just like, oh man, I just can't feel any kind of metta towards them. How else could you replace the thought of aversion? Well, consider this. The way to do it. Everybody, even the people we don't like, who do things we don't like, is going to die. Everybody's going to die. And Buddha said that no being, nobody wishes to die. Wishes to go through the pain of death. Nobody wants to suffer pain, and nobody wants to die. And sometimes even just that, it's like, oh my gosh, this person who I'm so annoyed at, they're actually going to die. They really are. And they're going to have to go through all of the suffering that their death might entail. And sometimes just that alone is enough to calm the mind, to calm the aversion. It's like, oh, yes, they are going to die. And what will generally arise is some compassion. This person is just like me. This person who I'm so annoyed with, oh my gosh, they're going to die just like me. And so that can start to catalyze some karuna, some metta karuna. Very, very simple. But what you're doing is you're bringing in an aspect of the practice that you probably have done quite a bit of, reflections on death, and using it as a tool, in this case, to replace hatred, aversion, annoyance, irritation. It's very, very simple, a simple tool. What if your mind is obsessed with something which is inanimate? So let's say you were on a walk and you saw this beautiful house and you're just like, oh my gosh, that is my dream house. And then later in your practice, what happens? The dream house starts obsessing the mind. It's like, oh, I love that house. If I only had an extra £100,000, I could sell this house and then I could buy that house. Ah, yes. Let me do that. Let me get a mortgage. Let me get. So the mind starts spinning with desire for a house. What do you do with that? Right. So you can't really practice a suva with that. What can you do? Okay. A house is subject to impermanence, like everything else. So houses need maintenance, don't they? So once you buy a house, guess what? At some point it's going to need painting. You're going to need to get somebody to come in and clean the gutters. The boiler is probably going to break at some point. If you're not careful, you're going to get mold in different corners of the house. And that's just a starting point for impermanence, right? I mean, another problem with houses is we think they're really safe, but they're not really. For example, they can catch fire. Burglars can come into our house. You know, I was burgled many years ago. It was horrible. Stuff happens to houses. And so reflecting in this way on the danger, the adinava, the downside of the house, what does that do? It starts to reduce the craving for the house. And if we really reflect enough, it's like, oh, actually, maybe that really nice house would actually be not so great after all. Maybe it actually would be a thorn in my side. Not only is it expensive, but there's all these things that could go wrong with it. And so the mind calms. So again, what are you doing? You're replacing a thought, a particular type of thought, with a more refined, a wholesome thought. Okay, so what I'd like you to do just right now is, so hopefully you've written R and maybe the other letters R, and then I, D, S, C. So for those of you who weren't here earlier, we'll go over that in a minute. Across the top, you've written R, I, D, S, C. Those 5 letters. And then on the left-hand side, if you write R for replace, and just jot down for yourself. Let's go through a subha. If on a scale of 1 to 5, how much does a subha resonate with you? So one is like, oh my gosh, I hate the subha practice. I just can't do it. I don't want to do it. So your mind is like, I can't do that. 5 would be, yeah, that's really easy for me. It's easy. Okay, so just for a subha practice, the 32 parts in this particular case, just write down a number 1 to 5 on as to how it resonates with you. 1 is it really doesn't, I hate it. 5 is, yes, it's a great practice for me. I know that next time I have desire, I have lust in my mind when I'm meditating, or even when I'm not meditating, I can bring that to my mind. I can bring one of the 32 parts or one or more of the 32 parts into my mind. Okay, so you're going to score it 1 to 5. Okay, second, let's write compassion here. So let's have a thought of aversion arises, annoyance, irritation. On a scale of 1 to 5, if you look back through your practice, if you look back through your mind, how your mind tends to be, on a scale of 1 to 5, how easy is it for you, or difficult, to bring compassion? For example, by reflecting on somebody's death into your mind. So 5 it's very easy. It's really easy for me to be compassionate. 1 is it's really hard. You know, particularly for people I don't like, trying to think clean thoughts about them, compassionate thoughts, nah, it's just really hard for me. So that will be a 1. Okay, so you're going to score it 1 to 5. And then also try it with inanimate objects. So let's take the house example, but it could be anything. You know, you go past a shop and there's some beautiful dress in the window, or coat, or pair of trousers or something. On a scale of 1 to 5, how easy or difficult would it be for you to bring thoughts of the downside of this thing? So 5 would be really easy. You know, let's say you walk past a shop, there's some very attractive clothing in the shop window, and your mind just leaps at it. And how, if it's very easy for you then to reflect on the downside, okay, so this piece of clothing, it could get lost, it's going to get holes in it, moths are going to eat it, I'm probably going to spill some coffee on it and it will look terrible, so I'm going to have to take it to the charity shop probably in 2 weeks anyway, or something, right? It's easy for you to reflect on the downside. And 1 would be it's very difficult. So all of these things you're going to score 1 to 5. Okay. Great. So before we move onto the next of the 5 tools that the Buddha gives us, it'd be very, very interesting just to hear some sharing on how you scored that. So we're scoring the R, the replacing, in those different ways. Who would like to share? What did you put? So basically, what numbers and why? Okay, Hunter, you look like you're about to say something.
I'd say that I found looking at the downside of things easier to do, and also the practice of the repulsiveness of things, but particularly downside, because often. But I found that the easiest. Interestingly, I found compassion for say somebody that wasn't in my good books more challenging. So anyway, for me, the downside is what I will use as a tool to replace when moments of lust comes up.
Fantastic. So what if you just kind of look back over what you've just done, what you've just accomplished for yourself? You've started to bring awareness to what kind of tools and in what kind of ways work best for you, because the answers are going to be different for everybody. For all of us on this call, there'll be different numbers because we've all got different minds. And so the more you know your own mind, the more accessible these tools are. And the more when you're meditating and you need these tools, the more you can just reach for the things that you just know are going to work. It also gives you a basis to practice from as well. Because if you know that something's particularly weak, you might want to spend some time strengthening it. But crucially, it's just giving you a lot more power in the practice because you know your own mind. Yeah. Sharoma, I'm super interested in what you put.
Okay. For last, I have this practice I do. Actually, quite often I do that. Whenever I get attracted to, say, a person, and it's more actually to qualities than the look itself, but just to crack that feeling that is a person, what I do is I use skin. And I know that the skin is about 4 millimeters thick. And then I skin that figure completely in a second. If it was you, then I would skin you so that what's left is like a chunk of horrible, fleshy zombie there. And that vision that comes completely eradicates that lust, and that's gone. And it happens so quickly because it's a vision change. So that I do for that if I get attracted or something like that. To be honest, so for the anger, actually, what works for me is I always think of good things that person has done for me in the association. If a word or something had annoyed me or fallen out, got angry because of a certain incident or even a horrible incident, I would gather up and think and get my mind to go on a journey of what a lot of happiness that person had given to me, what a lot of benefit I got from that person. And then at once I feel, okay, that's fine, how much did I benefit from this person? So this little anger, I can just let it go and I can forgive. It's something little I have to put up with the lot that I have gained, kind of. So turn it around with the gain that I have got in the past. So what else? That's it, isn't it? The inanimate houses and things, of course, at my age, we've done it, and we've worn the T-shirt and what do you say, done all that. So the mind doesn't actually get attracted to stuff like that, material things. So it's an easy thing to do. you can just go past it. Whatever craving had been done and dusted, kind of done. We've achieved it and gone behind it and achieved it, and seen the uselessness of that procedure. So we don't fall into that anymore. It's kind of the other way around, where you're giving now. Maybe the age-related thing as well, probably. So
Asian wisdom for sure. Yeah. I wish I were as advanced as you are.
the other thing I do for last is this work really, really well, is I imagine this person with it's 6 or 9 holes. I know it is, even to say it's horrible. So the eyes and the ear and the nose and the mouth, and then all that comes out of these holes, the urine and the excrement and feces and the smell of it, and what comes out of the ear, the eyes, the nose of this person, the vomit and the saliva smell of that. And that, even that, getting that experience into my mind, that is the human body. So what is that you're lasting after? That is the reality. So that works for me as well.
That's brilliant. I love it.
The horrible stuff that comes.
But it's true. It's true. It is how it is. Exactly. Interestingly, in the Chinese Agama's versions of the Satipatthana, it actually has the 9 orifices along with the 32 parts.
Yeah.
So it includes the 2 ears and all the ones that you just mentioned. Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. That's great. Well done. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I love it.
Thank you.
Or
Wonderful.
can I clarify? Can I clarify something, please?
Please, your auntie.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise. There's a park here, and they are doing, I think, a lot of fires and all that. I can't hear very well. What you were saying is, if there is a thought you want to get rid of, which is bothering during meditation, how you replace it with something wholesome. This is the first one, correct? That's the replace. Is that right?
That is exactly right. Yes. So the first of the 5 things that the Buddha says is replace, which is exactly as you said. Well, yeah.
Yeah. And then investigate this. This is the criteria you use in order to get rid of them. Investigate the danger of it. Correct?
Yeah. Well, actually, that one we haven't yet got onto. We're just going to get onto that now. So all the ones we've just been talking about are all replacements. They're all replacement
First
thoughts.
one only.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. First one.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But actually, that's a very nice segue, because I was just about to move on to the second one. So the second letter is I.
Yes.
I for investigate danger. So here, there are different ways you can do this. One of which, so again, let's just kind of like enter the experience. So let's say you're sitting, you're meditating, and the mind is obsessed with lust. Let's take lust as an example. And you've tried replacing. So you've tried the R, you've tried some asubha, you've tried to reflect on the impermanence of the person, whatever. None of the replacement methods actually work. So the Buddha then says what you need to do is you need to step it up to investigate the danger. So what is the danger in thinking about, obsessing about somebody with lust? What does lust do? So as you know, the Buddha spoke about the effects of unwholesome things in the mind. They create results. They create unpleasant results for us. So what you're starting to do is you're starting to reflect on the karma that you're creating with this particular course of action, which is, in this case, a lot of lustful thoughts. So in other words, there is consequence. There is consequence to it, and not good consequence. So, for example, supposing you were to die as you're having those thoughts, so you were to die with a lot of lust in your mind, that would not be good. The result of that would be potentially really bad. Lust tends to create the karma for what certainly being in a paya, certainly being in very painful realms, but particularly the Peta realm. So the Peta realm, you've got these hungry ghosts, and so craving. When you lead a life with a lot of craving, a lot of desire, it creates that Peta realm karma, or worse. So that's what you're doing when you're reflecting on the danger. So it kind of, if you think about hiri and ottappa, so ottappa being the drawbacks, the dangers, it has consequence. You could also reflect on the hiri side as well, the conscience. It's like, oh, this is not good. I don't want to be a person who is thinking unwholesome thoughts. So you can use the conscience, you can use the hiri as well. That's also part of reflecting in this particular way. Even more so if the mind is obsessed with aversion, with hate, right? So the Buddha spoke about how dangerous hate is in the mind. It stirs this pot and has horrible karmic consequences. So if you're sitting there and it's just, your mind is just obsessed with, oh, they did this and they did that and la 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 la, and then you just think, whoa, this is really bad for me. This is going to ripen in a lot of pain for me. That can be enough just to cut the thoughts, and they just drop away. It's like, oh, yeah, this is bad, and so the mind just calms just from doing that. So that's the I. That's the investigating danger. Okay. Let's suppose that doesn't work. So you've tried replacing, you've tried I, investigating danger. You now need to move on to D. What is D? Disregard. So basically, you do not pay attention to the thought at all. It's a really interesting one because, as we all know, because we've all done practice, how thoughts, when they obsess the mind, have a certain energy and momentum, and the more we pay attention to them, sometimes the stronger the thought gets, the more momentum it gets. You probably see this in daily life, right? Something happens, you start thinking about it, and you keep thinking about it, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger, especially if it's aversion, but actually craving too. So the Buddha is saying with this third approach, you just disregard it completely. Just take all the energy away. Don't pay attention to it. Ignore it. And that might work. It's a pretty interesting one. Ignore it completely. So that's tactic number 3. Disregard. Okay. Now, supposing you've tried replacing, you've tried investigating the danger, you've tried disregarding, you then need to step it up to the next level, which is S. S for slow the mind down. Slow it. So for those of you who know the sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 20, the Buddha gives this simile. So imagine a person walking, right? So walking, as you know, has quite a lot of energy to it, right? So they then think, what if I were to walk more slowly? So you then start walking more slowly. So the energy is being reduced. You then start to think, okay, I'm now walking slowly. What if I were to stand still? So you now stand. So now there's even less energy. You're just standing. So then you're now standing and you think, okay, standing still takes some energy. What if I were to sit down? So you sit down. So you've gone all the way from fast walking to slow walking to standing to sitting. And even then, what would be less energy than sitting? Lying down. So you lie down. So you can see what you're doing. You're reducing the energy in the body. So the Buddha is saying, in the same way, if the mind is obsessed with thoughts, particular types of thoughts, you can intentionally slow the mind down. Slow it down. It's just like, slow it down. And you may have experienced this, like, when your mind's racing and there's a lot of energy in the mind, it's like, even just taking a few breaths, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. You could actually intentionally slow the mind down until it actually stops, until the thought actually stops, which is amazing. So it comes from that intention to progressively slow the mind down. Okay, so that's the S. So we've got R, replace, I for investigate danger, D, disregard, S for slow. So you've made the word rids. And now finally C, rush, C for crush. This is pretty drastic. So for those of you who've read the sutta, not just the sutta, actually, the Buddha talks about it, in the sutta where he describes his path when he was a bodhisattva and the kind of things that he went through, where you crush, the Pali is a little complicated, but basically it translates as crush mind with mind. So he says, you clench your teeth, you touch the top of your mouth with your tongue, and like you sort of bring pressure, like physical pressure. You like try and crush the mind, like, so it's a strong tactic. So this is your last resort, right? You've done everything else, but particularly if it's a thought where there's a lot of hate, for example, you might eventually want to step it up to this level because you don't want to allow that hate to persist. It does work. I've done it once or twice myself, but it's not pleasant. You definitely want to leave it as a last resort. But the important thing is the Buddha's giving these progressive steps to calm the mind down, And if you have these in your toolbox, you will basically have everything you need to bring samadhi to the mind, which is pretty amazing if you think about that. It's like, wow. And at the end of the sutta, the Buddha says, it's kind of mind-blowing, really. He says, one who has mastered these courses of thought, these courses of training, who has mastered thought, can direct their minds to think whatever they want to think. So you think about how powerful that is, how normally the mind is just subject to whatever arises, right? Thoughts just come up completely unbidden. But if you master your mind, you master this that the Buddha is talking about, you get to a place where you have so much control of your mind, not control in a tight way, but just mastery through training of the mind. You can direct it to whatever you wanted to direct it to. That's amazing. It's just totally amazing. So you're giving yourself incredible power. So, yeah, just to recap. So those 5 letters those 5 words, those 5 tactics start with the letters R, and then I, and then D, and then S, and then C, which makes the mnemonic rids. The first 4 make the word rids, and then for C we can say clutter. So rids the mind of clutter. So that's a little mnemonic to remember the 5 stages. So when you're on retreat or wherever you are, and you actually consciously want to bring these to mind and do them, you need to do them. It's like, okay, what was the mnemonic again? Oh yes, rids the mind of clutter. Rids, R, replace, I, investigate danger, D, disregard, S, slow the mind down, C, crush. So it's very cool. Right. I'm mindful that we are out of time. It'd be really interesting just to hear before we finish any thoughts about that. So how did that land for you? Just did it feel useful? Do any one of the 5 feel particularly useful? Do you think you're going to be able to use these in the future? What thoughts do you have about them?
Just a quick one, Paul, to say I think they're all very useful, depending on the type of thought that comes to mind. So thank you very much. Some really practical tools to help us with the samadhi. I think, depending on whether it's a person or something that you're desiring or you have aversion to, and the depth of engagement with that thing, they're all very useful. Slowing down the mind, ignoring, investigating the bad consequences, or just if you can, really quickly replace it with something. And then that final thought you left with us to say that if you get better at this and you can establish samadhi and you can then direct your mind to whatever you wish to do, that is quite powerful. So thank you very much.
So welcome. So welcome. Yeah, thank you. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Samantha.
also
Yeah,
like to comment. It's quite good, really, remembering these, because you just all of a sudden land on it, and then you don't know how to get rid of it if there is something bothering you. So soon, if you are mindful, this thing comes to your mind, and at least one of them will work. Try.
exactly.
See? Yeah, like the mindfulness, which Venerable Dhamma used to mention a lot of things like this, slowly, mindfully, and what's the other one?
Slowly, mindfully, silently.
Oh, yes, silently. Yeah, there were several things, which still I remember. And also sticking labels all over the place, mindfulness. Everywhere you go, mindful. The pictures and all that, they are really good.
Exactly. And they're all part of what we talked about earlier, which is really wise attention. Wise attention in some ways is the entire path. And so having these incredibly powerful things that the Buddha taught us at our fingertips. So not kind of like vague in the mind, like, oh, what was that thing again? But actually having it right here. So wherever you are, anytime, it's like, oh yes, these are the tools, and you can just bring them to mind. It's unbelievably useful. Fabulous. So thank you all so much. And really, seriously, may the merit of this time together, really wonderful, beautiful Dharma time, which could have been doing so many other things, worldly things, but we all chose to be here, practicing the Dhamma, working on the Dhamma, working out our liberations. May the merit of all of that be cause and condition for all of our liberations as soon as possible. Wishing that whatever for us our next path and fruit is, that arises as soon as possible, as many times as possible, all the way to liberation. And we share that with all of our loved ones, all those dear to us, our friends, our family, our relatives, with all of those in the Sangha who have helped and supported us, with the entire Arya Sangha, with all beings, just all beings throughout the entire universe, without exception, wishing that all beings may be liberated as soon as possible. May it be so.
Sadhu,
May it be so.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Paul, very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you all so much. So
Thank you,
lovely to
Paul,
be
very
with you.
much.
You enjoyed
Thank
it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise. Come
These,
of permitting. We'll see each other next month.
Yes, Paul, and I think we need to pay our gratitude to you as well, for the time you spent with us the last 2 hours. In summary, the RIDS Clutter tools I think that's a fantastic way to remember today's lessons, rids, clutter. So may the merit from all of this help you with having good health, long life, and most importantly, the ability to progress on the path. So we are very grateful. We are also grateful to everyone who's joined the call today, because it is with the presence of your Kalyana Mitra friendship that we're able to take this sessions forward. So today we had Sudanta, Dil, Shiroma, Sheila, Paul, Hiranti, Lakshman, Matisha, Mihiri, Samantha, Yasastri, Kilani, I think, and Tushan, I think Yasastri's son, also joined the session at one point. So thank you.
Also Ron joined us.
Oh yes, and Ron joined as well. That's right. Yes, Ron joined as well. So thank you so much for your fantastic engagement, and we will see you again next time.
Yes, see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.